it's McKaylee from breakingyarn.com, and today I am bringing you a video talking about how to block knitted or crocheted items and to prevent color bleeding if you're using highly saturated colors like I am in my Beak Street Tee. I have my bleeding out colorway, which is red. I have Jane Margolis, which is black, also very highly saturated, and Lily of the Valley, also it's in my quarter round fingering. These are all in my quarter round fingering base, and that one is not saturated. So I was a little bit nervous about blocking. I've never been nervous about blocking before. I've always just gone for it and it's always turned out fine. But about halfway through knitting this garment, I started to get a little nervous. Like, if this was a purchased item from a store, like, you would have to wash this in cold water so that the colors don't bleed together, because the red and white, you know, often will make pink if you do it in hot water. And so I thought I would go ahead and take you along on my journey for blocking my Beak Street Tee, and hopefully provide some tips and tricks to avoid color bleeding, especially with hand-dyed yarns. Even though, you know, dyers, we wash the yarn and we rinse it until it's clear, the water runs clear, there's always a little bit of dye left, and if you do it in hot water especially, you will see some bleeding. And so I thought that this could be a good opportunity to show you how I'm going to block my Beak Street Tee and hopefully keep it white, black, and red, not black, pink, and red, but let's see. Here are some items that I will be using to test for saturation color bleed in my yarn before I block my Beak Street Tee that has white, black, and red in it. I have my blocking mats from Knit IQ. I have some simple woolite, some distilled white vinegar, Shout color catchers, a towel, some blocking pins. I really like these ones from Knitter's Pride. So let's get started. So the first thing I did, I learned from Andrea Mowry. She had talked about, instead of knitting up a whole swatch to test for color bleed, you can just cut up some of the yarn and then test it that way. So that's what I did. I have two different piles here. I'm gonna do two different experiments. One in hot water with some woolite to see what kind of color bleeding we get, and then I'm going to try it in cold water also with woolite and to see what kind of color bleed we get with cold water. So let's do that. So it has been about 15 minutes or so, and actually there's pretty minimal bleeding. And it really doesn't look bad, actually. But I'll go ahead and try it in the, oops, don't want that to go down the drain, do I? Try it in the cool water too. See how that helps. I'll come back in 15 minutes and check on this. So it has been about 15 minutes on this. The cold water, definitely a lot less bleeding. Still not very much at all though. I think I'll be good. So let's do this for the real thing. I'm so nervous. Okay, so this is cold water, 2 color catchers, a little bit of woolite, and I'm about to add a little bit of this distilled white vinegar. That should be enough. It's probably about a tablespoon or so. And I'll add my garment. There we go. Moment of truth. these color catchers work if there's any bleeding. All right. I guess I'll leave it for about 15 minutes and come back. So it's been about 15 minutes, and honestly the water is still really clear. I'm very happy about that because I was nervous. But the red doesn't seem to be coming out too much, and the black doesn't seem to be coming out too much. Again, I'm blocking in cold water, just as you would if you had purchased this type of sweater from the store. You probably wouldn't wash this in your washing machine on hot, just to avoid color mixing and bleeding. So same applies to your hand knits, especially with hand-dyed yarns. Do not block in hot water. I know a lot of people suggest hot water, and I just don't understand why. It'll bloom just as well in cold water, I promise. So I'm gonna pull this out, wrap it up, get it dried off, and onto my blocking mats. And I will just gently squeeze out some of the water without twisting. Just to try to get out as much moisture as I can. My other favorite trick for blocking is to get a big towel like this and put the garment inside of it, roll it up, step on it. Oh, I should be wearing actual shoes because my socks are getting wet, but that's okay. A little water never hurt nobody. Alright. Okay. Moment of truth here after I stepped on it. Not even any color bleeding on my towel or anything. So I am going to just gently lay it out. I don't want to stretch it too much since it's a garment and it already fits me. If it didn't fit me, then I might stretch it a little more. But since it does fit me, I'm not going to. And really, these sleeves were really curly, so I'm definitely going to pin those in place here. And the neckband. I think that's good. And just pin the sleeves in place. Maybe I'll put a few at the bottom too, just to kind of keep it in place here. that's good. I'm not gonna pin too much, if not more than I need to, because now it will just dry. Okay, that's cool. All right, we'll see when it dries. Here she is, my Beak Street Tee. While getting blocked. She is on the mats. Oh, okay, I can't wait to wear this. So, my Beak Street Tee is currently drying on its blocking mats. I had no color bleeding at all in my hand-dyed yarns. But I think it's because I blocked in cold water. I added about a tablespoon of vinegar for my shirt, so you can gauge based on that. I mean, it's pretty cheap anyways, so a tablespoon isn't gonna hurt anything. And I also added 2 of the color catchers. I had read on the box that you should do 2 if it was highly saturated. So I just went ahead and threw 2 in there. Didn't have any color on those either. And that's it. One of the main reasons you would want to block in cold water as opposed to hot water is that the cold water locks down the follicles. So it will make it to where the yarn won't bleed, but it'll also make it to where the yarn also won't accept any color. So like say the white did not accept any color from the red or the black, because it was also locked down. So the black was locked down, red was locked down, white was locked down, they weren't giving, and white was not receiving. So they all stayed to themselves and the colors stayed true, and we didn't have any issues. So I hope this was helpful for you. I know it was helpful for me. I was starting to feel very anxious, and about halfway through of knitting it, like I said, I started wondering, how am I gonna block this? And what if it bleeds? And like, what if I ruin my top before I even get to take photos of it? Or, you know, any of that stuff. And I didn't want to wear it unblocked. I hope this was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions or if you have any issues with it. But again, if you just max out all the tips that you have, if you're any concerned about color bleeding, or if you have highly saturated colors at all, then do all of the tips. There's nothing that says you can't do all of them at once to make sure that you get the best results. But also if you're concerned and you don't have time to knit a swatch, because who really wants to do that just to test for color bleeding, you can, well, I guess, okay, if you're a good sweater knitter and you swatch anyways, and you block your swatch, you can test your swatch, I guess, in cool water. I would test it in cool water. Why test it in hot water to see what's gonna happen? But test it in cool water, see if there's any bleeding. If not, then you don't have to worry about blocking your entire piece or any color bleeding with your entire piece. But if you don't have time to knit a swatch, or if you don't swatch, like me, you can just cut off some of the yarn or save the scraps that you wove in and you cut off and you trimmed all of your ends. Save those, put them in hot or cold water, and just kind of see what happens so that you know what adjustments to make for your blocking process. I hope that was helpful, and thank you so much for joining me. Bye.